Welcome everybody. Welcome to the Process Innovation Challenge. This year we just said back to basics, let's simplify it, let's get as much in as we can into one session. That was feedback we got from people before. Fill us full of innovations was one comment we got. That's what we're going to try and do. We got quite a few submissions this year. We've whittled it down to 6 in 2 tracks. And let me explain quickly how it's going to go on, and then I'll get off the stage and let the stars of the show get on it. 6 innovators, a process track, technology track, that was based on feedback as well. You get to vote, so you will need Slido, and you have the power of who wins and who competes well. So once we do that, we're going to have track winners, a process winner and technology track winner, and then we'll have a final round which will be Q&A. How do you get involved? Well, you'll vote. You can also ask questions, and we'll take those questions. You need to put them through Slido, and Alex is going to explain a little bit how that works right now. And of course, we're very optimistic about this. Does it sound too good to be true? Well, let's see if we can get it to work today.
All right, just a reminder on how Slido works. You can do it through the LocWorld mobile app. There's a Slido key right there. Select the red room is the main conference room. We'll ask you to vote for your favorite innovator in each track. We'll also do a vote at the end for the overall innovator of the year. Throughout, as people are presenting, you may also submit your questions for each of the individuals, innovators. Make sure we need to know who your question is for. So please either enter the first name of the speaker or their company, and we'll be able to identify that. If you don't have the LocWorld app, you can open a browser, go to slido.com, and enter the hashtag LocWorld40, and that's all you need to know.
Thanks, Alex. So, our innovators, stand up please, everyone. We've got David from Glossa, Julia from Mones, Benedetta from Translated in the Process track. Here they are over here. Thank you. We have Amy from Translators Without Borders, Istvan from Belazi, and Harsha from Image Translate. They're here as well. There's another part of the equation here, the terrible dragons. Ooh, come on, ooh, there you go. So they're going to ask questions. They've been working and coaching the innovators over the past few weeks and helping a lot with the organization of this whole thing. And so that's Yuka Nakasone, Esther Curiel, and Miguel Sepulveda will be your dragons. So Alex, as you know, myself are here as well, and Anna's helping us on timing. So let's get this show on the road. We're starting with the process session. So I will just ask our first speaker, who's David from Glossa, to take the stage. David.
Hi everybody, my name is David. Apologize please for the language errors that I might have. For the presentation, I'm a solution architect and product director by Glossa Group, which is an LSP with headquarters in Hamburg, Beijing and Zurich. And we have developed in the last years a system, a method and a tool for quality evaluation and of course linguistic quality assurance. The topics was in the last 10 years always to find a way to avoid discussion with feedbacks, with subjective compliance and so on. And we find out a method to avoid this, defining the translation quality with risk avoidance, because this is where it matters for company and organization or LSP. They don't want to lose money and then want to optimize the cost. So we find out how to do it. First, we have implemented a technology that allows us to work in any CAD tool with a connector and with a plugin. The connector allows us to connect the data, to get the data from the CAD tools as a package, and we create a project, a proofreading or translation quality evaluation project. We have the plugin that allows us to documentate the error information and to create a form inside the CAT tool and deliver it to our platform to evaluate the quality of the translation. The second aspect of the plugin is that we have an objective way to comment errors and to correct the target language. We have implemented items with values that are comparable and measurable, so you have the possibility to get statistics and make comparisons for document types, for language pairs, for business unit, for companies, for the market, and so on. When you create the project, and that's why I mentioned the risk avoidance, you define a threshold, so what you accept to, or what you want for a quality level in your translation. And mostly you have very big differences between marketing documents, technical documentation, or other documents. And that's why you need exactly to define which kind of error category, which kind of severity, and what are the risks for marketing that you don't want, or risks for technical documentation that you want, or pharmaceutical documents. We generate after the upload of the reports dashboard, very powerful dashboard, such as, for example, the actual trend, so the actual value, the period before, the trend. You can sort out by language, you can sort out by error categories, by severity, by KO error that you can define by rules. We can show the evaluation in a unit or a language pair. We can see how many reports are failed, how many translations are failed or not. We can even show a vendor ranking and show by any kind of vendor the evaluation over the time, or in the export and target country, what is the relationship between different language pairs or document kinds in every country. So, last word, we have implemented more than 7 standards in our tool that allows us to be audited and certified. We have as well taken the advice of a lawyer for the compliance, and it's a kind of insurance for LSP or companies and organizations.
Great. Very interesting. Quality,
Yeah.
Quality, metrics, all good stuff. Now, we have the dragons who probably have a few questions for you, so let me pass over to them.
I will start. David, you talk about CMS, you talk about QA, you talk about ISO scoreboards. The way I see it, these are no new concepts. So from your point of view, what's the real innovation here?
The first innovation is in the plugin, because you have the complete history of the past of your corrections. So you might compare, for example, a correction that you have done 2 years ago, and the plugin show you that you are consistent and accurate with your method. The same error category, the same severity, the same rules are applied for your correction. That's the first innovation. The second one,
The tracking possibility.
yes. You can track every kind of change, every kind of content or metadata across any kind of CAT tools and TMS. So you are not dependent from a CAT tool. That's the second innovation.
David, I'm wondering, like it looks to me like this is very much for LSPs as the main target audience. Have you any use cases for client-side organizations?
Yes, we have always the 3 focus: processes, configuration of tools or connectors, and of course the human resource or vendor management. So for organization, they can assess different LSP with such a tool over 1 month, for example, or 10 projects, and compare them, because it's always the same kind of feedback. So you have no discussion. It's a fact, you can compare it, and you can measure it and make a ranking. That's one of the use cases. The other one, you have a trainee, and you can just watch the progress of the translation scores. Another use case for companies and organizations could be, for example, procurement units that need to evaluate again and again the price, and they just want to have the best score for the lowest price. So the best way to do is to put the threshold and to find out who is the best in your ranking for that pricing.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, David. So just to explain the format, you probably picked it up. They're pitching for 4 minutes, questions for about 2. When all pitches are done, we'll take questions from the audience as well. So as Alex said, in Slido, just label out the name of the person or the company so as we know where the question goes to. So let's get going to the next one. So Julia, please join us on stage.
Bit shorter. Yeah, present. Cool. I'm Julia. I look after localization for a mobile banking product called Moniz, and we've been trying to innovate a bit the way we do translations, and let's dig in. There is a big problem within the translation community, and one that people tend not to bring up too much, and that's the fact that once translated, apps can convert much less than their original counterparts, up to 3 times less, in fact. But why is that? Recent neurolinguistic studies show that you can only access the creative and insightful part of your brain when you create content from scratch. But this is not the case when you translate. When you translate, it seems you can only properly tap into the part of your brain that helps you with logic and is there to support you with routine tasks. But why is that? What makes these 2 apps so dramatically different that they end up using different parts of the brain? There seems to be a cloud hanging over the translation act per se, and we think this cloud is source text. So we've taken a step back and reimagined the translation process in a way that removes source text from the scenario. You can see this this was our pilot for this project. This is our sign up versus login screen. We knew it needed improvement in terms of metrics. So we stripped all the visual context of any wording, and this was what the translators would see, a functional description of the element. It was really successful. We had a 50% reduction in the number of people that called customer care with long, expensive calls because they didn't understand the flow, and an almost 10% uplift in the number of logins. What our translation looks like is not dramatically different from a usual translation process, but the designers, when they prepare the markups, they don't put any English wording on them. They just put a functional description like, this button takes the users to settings. And there's this very text that makes its way into our translation management tool and acts as a source. So English here is just another language and happens in parallel as with all the rest. It can be done with existing translation tools. This is a translation tool, and you can see we have an extra English language we created called Master, and this acts as a source for everything, even for English. So, based on the success of the first experiment, we decided to redo all the copy for our invite funnel, and this was an even more successful experiment. 81% more people referred a friend. And this resulted in total with 23% more people, active users, coming through as a result of referrals. So what's next? We're in the process of identifying all the key conversion stages that we'd like to rewrite copy for using this approach. We're conscious that this would be a bit of an overkill for other types of content, so we'll put them in buckets and make them follow different workflows. We'll keep measuring to make sure that it's still worth the effort, and we will keep spreading the word that there's an alternative to your usual translation scenario and that it can help you convert.
So, really interesting. So is it going to be raining source text? Is that what we can expect, or are they nice clouds? Excellent. Well done. Questions, dragons?
I love this innovation. I love the idea. My concern would be on scalability, and I'm wondering, for the tests that you carried out, how does it compare in terms of the time it takes the linguist to, I'm not going to say translate copyright really. How does that compare against normal turnaround times?
Sure. The challenge is doing this at scale. The first time with the experiment, the lead time was 30% more than it generally is with other translations. But within the second experiment, when we did the invite funnel, there was only a 15% increase, and we are committed to bringing that down to between 5 and 10%. But if you think about your key conversion metrics, and really the points in the funnel that make a difference, they do justify the extra effort. You can just translate normally all the rest, but if you find a way to do this without breaking the bank, then you should.
You have the magic word there, ROI, and I was wondering which are the parameters that you take into consideration to balance that the effort is justified.
Yeah, sure. Well, different conversion stages would have different events that we look at. For the invite funnel, we had a number of people copying the invite code, a number of people that actually came through via invites, and we can then boil down to the value of a customer, how much that brings to the business, and broken down per language. So.
Okay.
And we can compare that with, we would A/B test it, the text that was done traditionally for the screen and this one. See the difference.
Okay, I have a question for you, and it's a little bit about applicability of this. So it seems to work in the app type scenario. Can you see that extending beyond that, or is it very much down to content that needs to resonate with users?
Every content should resonate with the users, probably, but it's a tricky one. Definitely, app content is particularly suited to this approach, I think, or app content needs it to convert. My approach has always been, when I'm in jobs like this for different companies, is it's best not to localize than to localize badly. And I think in this respect, when you decide how do you spread the budget, different content types may require different levels of attention. Would I do it for longer CMS types of content? I would definitely do it for things like social media posts and blog posts. There is a way to use the English as a brief as opposed to as a source content. Unfortunately, these MRI scans of people's brains show that even if you're the best copywriter ever, there was this guy in the experiment, copywriter for Coca-Cola and Latin America. When you see the source text, you're so influenced by it that what you end up doing is an average job, even when you're left a lot of leeway in terms of coming up with something quite different. But if you change it with source.
Thank you very much, Julia. All right, moving on. Next up is Benedetta. So she has another different topic. As you can see, a lot of the topics are slightly different in process. You can get a sense for the human side. So Benedetta, please join the stage.
My name is Benedetta, and today I'm here to talk about a new way to approach the selection of linguists. So, how many times were you asked by a client to translate a huge volume of words in many languages in just a couple of months? It happens quite, often. And recently, we had to recruit 300 top linguists in 30 different languages, and we only had a month to do it. So, because we didn't want to compromise quality, we designed and implemented an AI-augmented selection process, where AI ensures higher screening capacity and allows enormous time savings, while we humans can concentrate on keeping the quality high by engaging linguists, by working on their commitment with an Dutch training. So in our case, we had to screen 30,000 resumes in a month. This task would have taken 30 full-time vendor managers to complete manually. With this approach, though, we completed the resume screening part in just a week, and for the remaining 3 weeks, we hosted a high Dutch training at our premises with language leads and copywriters from all over the world to train them on client guidelines. So let's see how it works. So T-Rank a priori is the technology behind this innovation, and basically it analyzes the content of the resumes and assigns each resume a score from 1 to 100 based on the presence or absence of keywords that the algorithm identifies as relevant to the translation profession. So for instance, in this case, it will check if the word translator is in there. If it's there, it's gonna bring down, if it's not there, it's gonna bring down the score from 55 to 50, whereas if it's there, it's gonna bring up the score for the translator. And then it moves on to the next keyword, which in this case, if there is any references from other clients. Right now, this system works very well. 95% of the times, a senior vendor manager will agree with the result of the system completely. What can you do with this? Okay, so while T-Rank a priori was built on our custom needs, the good news is that it is actually quite easy to reproduce. It's not any fancy technology. So there are many ways to do it, but one way, as a start, could be to export 1,000 resumes into Excel, where one resume equals one row. And then manually assign each resume a score from 1 to 100. And finally, give this training set to a Python developer. It's not, as I said, not very hard, the tech part. Once you have trained the system and implemented it in your workflow, ideally, each incoming resume will be scored automatically. And this will help you save a lot of time. So all the time you save, make sure to reinvest in human development. That's the key part. We believe there is really nothing to fear about technology as long as we give back to humans all the time and money that it helps us save. In this case, we hosted at our premises a training for language lead and copywriters. We offered them workshops in not just the client style guides, but leadership and anything that could be useful to them to guide, to lead the teams of linguists. So, yes, and finally, we found that a good translator that is highly committed to your mission, to you as a client, will perform much better than an excellent linguist that just sees you as one of many customers, that doesn't really care about you and your mission. So I hope this was useful, and thank you.
Very interesting, sort of AI type stuff for doing more mundane type tasks. Let's see what the dragons have to say.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. Hi.
Hi. As Dave said, it seems fantastic. Maybe for high volume job. But what about small size agile continuous organization type projects? Does this apply, or this is just for high volume?
Actually, this project I was describing with the 300 linguists is for a continuous localization project. So it's a high volume, but continuous localization.
Okay.
So the two things, actually, I don't think it's really a matter of how big is the project, because you could consider also having less linguists training. But it's really a matter of engaging your team of linguists. And the AI part, of course, for us is essential because we receive 5,000 resumes each month. So it's impossible for us to screen them manually.
Yeah.
So maybe if you receive less resumes, you don't need an automatic screener. But I mean, once you implement it like just once, then you have it and you can use that time for anything else.
For small to big
Yes.
jobs. Okay, thank
So,
you.
I have a follow-up question, because I mean, if you already have identified the translators, that's part of the problem, which is good that it's solved. But how do you keep them engaged, and what KPIs of engagement you might have, especially when you are, as Yuka was mentioning, a continuous localization? How do you keep them engaged in those projects?
okay, so this is a quite recent experiment. So to be completely honest, in terms of keeping them engaged, we are planning, we don't have any experience yet, we are planning to have regular calls with the language leads and copywriters that are in the team of the linguists, and keep the content, a constant contact with them. Okay. An idea could be to invite them from time to time, or go to them and meet them frequently. In terms of KPIs, we have two. So first of all, the acceptance rate of jobs. We noticed it increased for 20%, so they tend to accept more jobs if they are engaged. And then the pass rate, the quality, the pass rate of projects improved from 94 to 97. And this is just because of the training we did at the premises.
Okay, thank you, Bernadette.
Great. And yeah, thank you. I have one other question for you. It's a bit of an Irish question.
Okay.
Is there a way to cheat the system?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right. Well done. Good. That's our process group done. So we heard from David, and he spoke about metrics and quality. We've heard from Julia, who was telling us about, forget about source tests, that's so last year, and Benedetta, who we just heard from now, on her innovation with choosing of resources and speeding up that process. So what we're going to do next is go into the technology round, so straight in. We'll then take your questions from the floor. So just a reminder, Slido, you can put your questions in, just label who you want that question to go to, if it's not to all of the innovators. So let's go into technology. And first up is Amy from Translators Without Borders.
Assalamu alaikum. I Hungary de Rishola, Zibamka Baideshar Inju. Ara Hunuga Saranduri, Camphor Rohingya Color Zuru Buzivala.
In 2017, almost 1 million Rohingya refugees fled extreme violence in Myanmar. At the time, TWB was just starting to get a reputation for the excellent work we can do in humanitarian response. And a major aid organization had just called us and asked us to help. But I was torn. Rohingya is an oral language, and writing it down has deeply political implications. And I didn't know what to do, so I called our team together, because if we didn't take this challenge, we might never be asked again. So I called the team together and said, what do you guys think we should do? And they said, let's do it, why not? So the first question we asked ourselves was, why would we produce a written translation for an oral language? We knew from our research that only 23% of the displaced women in northeast Nigeria could understand the written translations we were producing. So we had to figure out a solution for low literacy environments. We developed something called Kato Speak. Kato Speak combines translation memory technology with voice functionality so that we can deliver translated text and audio translations quickly and easily. This is perfect for the low literacy, low tech environments we often find ourselves working in. The workflows aren't complicated, the audio technology is simple, and we don't need expensive, fancy recording studios. So once we had the tech and we put the processes in place, then all we had to do was train our language leads on how to use it. But how does it work? Kato Speak stores audio data together with source and target text in a sort of metadata. Using this matching technology, we can leverage previously recorded audio translations. We do the recording at the same time as we do the translation, and we ask a reviser to check it. Once all the segments are recorded, then we can compile them all together, and voila! We have an audio recording of the translated text. But we're taking this further. If you read any TechCrunch or Medium or any of the tech media, you know that 2020 is largely touted to be the year that voice technology will explode. But this quote, and the conversations I've had with women in Kenya and Bangladesh who are using smartphones largely for fintech apps, really made me think. For the 781 million illiterate people in the world, voice technology could transform their lives. Kato Speak facilitates the generation and storage of voice data. It can be used to develop innovative voice-based language text solutions specifically for low-resource languages. And TWB is already doing this. We've developed text and audio glossaries in 17 languages. We're collecting voice data in Northeast Nigeria that can be used to produce key life-saving messaging. And we're looking at use cases, such as trigger word searches to ensure accountability. But this is only the beginning. There's much more to come. Thank you.
Hello, Naomi. Thanks very much. Very interesting. I'm sure there's a lot of questions on this and how the whole voice thing comes into play, and does it go into a translation memory unit, but I'll let the dragons ask the questions.
Oh, thanks for queuing it up.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I did understand more about the production side, but I'm wondering how you deliver the contents to the people who need in the field, because you said something like low-tech and people who don't understand text.
Right. No, that's a great question. So there are a couple of different ways that we do this. There are loudspeakers often in markets that you can just play messages over and over again. We also work with radio stations. And sometimes, honestly, it's loudspeakers on the backs of donkeys wandering around refugee camps.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
It helps to get it consistent, because if you have a live person doing it, they often mess up the words like I do all the time. And so if you have it recorded and it's a consistent recording, then it's much more effective.
Amy, I love what you're doing on the field, and this is amazing, an amazing solution for the need you have. But I can see the implications as well for accessibility is becoming more and more of a concern, I suppose, for companies, and it's the next big thing that we want to solve.
Sure.
And I can see how Kato Speak could really help there.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, you're storing the segments, the audio segments, as part of the translation memory. How does that work then for content reuse? I can see how you could end up with a mismatch of different voices, that you're patching together, which wouldn't do an awful lot for user experience. So just wondering if you have.
Well, what we first did was all the recordings were done by a man and a woman, so that we could produce either male or female content. But we found that it actually didn't make that much difference. It's mostly just 2 or 3 people who do all of the recordings, because these are very low resource languages, right? And the kinds of messages that we're putting out are not, it's not like 3,000 words of complicated text. It's pretty simple stuff because people have to be able to understand it pretty quickly.
Yes. Thank you.
And quick question for me, where did the name come from? Can't just speak.
Now you're playing to the Hungarians in the audience.
Are there any Hungarians in the audience?
I'm afraid to answer this question. Istvan, maybe you can answer it. There's a Hungarian linguist who could translate into 22 languages. One of the biggest linguists in the world, and that's how Kato got its name.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Amy. Good. We're getting through things. Hopefully your questions are coming in, and keep them coming in. We'll give you time to get those answered. And I think there is a Hungarian in the audience. Is that it? Istvan is going to join us from Belazi.
Good afternoon. My name is István Lengyel, and I just started a new company, Be Lazy Dave, which I like to call the partnership company that enables continuous localization all across the supply chain. Some of you probably know my past history with MemoQ, and over the last few years, a couple of things changed in my mindset, but one thing remained, that the localization industry can only get better if we give value to the enterprises, translators, and LSPs at the same time. I have done work with SLVs and have seen how much project management overhead they suffer when they work for MLVs, giving them tiny jobs that come from the end customer's need for continuous integration, continuous delivery. Just recreating the project in XDRF or Plunet, the system that they use as their business management system, takes 3 to 5 minutes on average. If a PM only costs 10 euros an hour, the cost is €0.5 even with 3 minutes of work. Just look at the menu on my slide to see how many other things you need to do with a single project. In such an environment, how can you deny to pay a minimum fee and go to bed with clear conscience? Everybody is throwing the problem of localization over the fence. And I came to the conclusion that in a world where LSPs invariably work in multiple systems, but have to run their business as a business, no TMS, no tool is ideal for the entire business chain, but an aggregator, a middleware, a hub, something that does not add value on its own right, but orchestrates all the systems that you use, like the payment systems for the banks. We have seen a variety of CMS connectors, but they solve a content problem rather than an industry problem. This is not about orchestrating a company. This is about orchestrating an industry, the supply chain. So let's see what BeLazy is about. In its first implementation, which went online last week, it is connecting vendor portals with business management systems. If an SLD connects to a vendor portal hosted by Venga Global or Moravia or Relocalize or Vistec, and they are using XDRF or Plunet, it's no longer necessary to copy-paste all the information about the tiny 20-word projects. This is done automatically. How? BeLazy, the PM logs into BeLazy, keeps the page open, and approves the project, and in a few months sets up auto-approval rules, like automatically take all English-Spanish projects that are less than 500 words with at least a date deadline. And BeLazy is currently just a website, but we are adding more modalities. It can be an app on your watch, it can be an Alexa skill. Just imagine working out on the treadmill. Alexa, what are my projects offered now? Isn't that better than juggling 20 websites with email notifications? BeLazy is a nice example of exception-based project management that clearly benefits the SLVs, but the MLVs also win. They get faster project placement. We want translators to use it too, by offering it for free with Google Sheet integration. And then we need to learn to parse emails too, and maybe write automated email answers in your native tongue. And how is this made possible? By giving back, by sharing revenue with the partners and incentivizing them to keep the connections working and slash the API costs. The goal is to achieve a fully continuous localization workflow. Today, if you take a project and it's also in a TMS, let's say Word server, when you change it in XDRF, the translator, the TMS translator won't change, so it cannot be automated yet. But we'd like to work in all the different systems and orchestrate all of them together. And if there is no human PM work necessary at the SLVs, only a great vendor management, then the minimum fee is reasonable when the translator requires that. But if they do, we look into how to support that. What I see reasonable today is that this technology will enable profitable work for SLVs, even at relatively low minimum fee levels. In 4 minutes, I haven't spoken about how this can benefit the end customers. Well, check back next year's pick, and remember, or come and say hello to me, and remember the URL, belazy.cat.
Thank you, Istvan from Be Lazy. Well done. I'm sure we have plenty of questions for you now.
Yes. I was just wondering because, for example, the last edition of Process Innovation Challenge in Seattle, the winner was Cherio, who is a kind of connector provider, right? So there are lots of connectors and connectors and connectors in the world. What's your innovation here?
Okay, so I know like the CMS connectors, which is what Cilio is, which basically takes content from repositories and offers it, let's say, for translation. This is for the translation end user. This is the systems of Sitecore and SharePoint and wherever. It's basically taking the content. Then there is also Intento, which is also a middleware. What they do is a machine translation. Choose the best machine translation engine for me. What we do is actually together for the best possible workflow.
I'm still thinking your answer, processing. I wanted to ask you, because the solution is everything about connection and connecting to content management system, business management system. So great power comes great responsibility.
You don't do content.
Yeah.
With vendor portals. Yeah.
Yeah. So for that vendor portal, how are you approaching security, confidentiality? Because you are connecting everything. So which are your thoughts around this?
Yeah, so basically in the system, you need to log in, like in the Be Lazy system, you need to log in with your username and password that you use for the LSPs. Now, the way we have built it is that we are using Microsoft Azure, and they have a technology called Key Vault, which basically protects all this information from being leaked. So it's kind of like, it's fully protocoled, it's something that, that you can easily address. And one of the things that we are doing is that we are going for ISO 27001, and we have already started it, but because we haven't been operating for 3 months, we cannot get certified yet, so now just trust me for 3 months, please, and after that it's going to be with a big stamp.
Okay, I trust you for a quarter.
Okay, well thank you very much, Istvan. Well done. We're down to the last innovator, and I welcome on stage Harsha.
Hello everyone, I am Harsha. I am representing Image Translate for the PIC. So this was web around 2005, mostly text, couple of hyperlinks, simple web pages, right? Fast forward 15 years and then the web has undergone a wild transformation. Think of all the major media platforms today, which is Netflix, YouTube, Instagram. They have nothing to do with text. It's actually images and videos. And they're growing at an unprecedented scale. But anybody who's dealt with translating these new kinds of media will tell you how hard it is. And that's because the text is locked inside the media. And that's where our innovation comes in. I'm going to take a Chinese image and then I'm going to localize it into English using 2 methods. First we'll do it the regular way, then we'll do it again using the innovation that we built. So we start with the regular way naturally with an OCR, which is going to tell us where each segment of text comes from. So once we have all of that text, you copy it over to your CAD tool, import it to your CAD tool. I'm using Excel here for the sake of simplicity. If you use the CAD tool, this would be faster. So yeah, we have all 3 segments, and then we go into image editing. Now this is the most difficult and the time-taking part, where you have to remove all the original text. Remember, this is not a Photoshop file, this is a PNG, so you have to remove all the original text, and you can imagine how much time it takes. And this is a simple image. Once all of this is done, then comes the second part where you have to put back translations in the correct place with the correct color, fonts and sizes. So imagine the time it would take. So this simple image, this video is playing 5 times as fast, and that's the final image. As a summary, it took us 5.5 minutes to arrive here. And we ended up using 3 tools, which is OCR to get the text out, a CAD tool to manage translations, and finally Photoshop to recreate the image in the target language. What we wanted to see was how do we innovate this process? How can we do it faster and better? We took the same image and then we processed it using our technology, which works like this. All you have to do is to simply select the text then and there, and it will translate using machine translation, remove older text, put back the new text with the correct colors, fonts, alignment, everything. You can even edit all the translation in place to see how it looks then and there, and you can export it. As a summary, this took us 15 seconds. That's a 20 times improvement with the previous process. And using just one tool which can be operated by just one person. Obviously, there's no magic involved here. What's happening behind the scenes is we built a unified interface and we made the process actually invisible. So you connect OCR, machine translation, CAD, and finally you connect image editing, and you make that invisible to the end user. And let the end users actually just take care of quality of translation and how the visual appearance of images looks like. Put them both together, and that's what we call image translate. Thank you.
Wow, so you're removing lots of clicks.
Yeah, we did. In fact, the last part is even automated. You don't even have to draw which parts you want to localize. It can actually guess. So you put in an image in English and then you can get images in 30 languages in 30 seconds. Of course, you still have to post-edit because it's only empty. Yeah.
Super. I bet we've lots of questions for you. So let's start with Esther.
Yes. Arsha, I'd like to know what empty tools you can connect to it.
So this one, the one that we're using out of the box is Google Translate. But then because it's a pipeline, the way we built is you can swap and swap out components. So you can use Google, you can use Bing, or if you have your own custom empty, you just tell us the endpoints and then it wouldn't take more than 15 minutes to. So, and the same applies to OCR. You don't have to stick to one particular vendor. You can swap and swap out any technology.
Yeah, I can see a potential concern for confidentiality of information. You know, if you're using Google Translate, Bing, or kind of one of the standard free tools.
Yeah, to be fair, I do not fully, I'm not capable of answering that. But yeah, right now we're a web-based tool, but we do support deploying it on-premise given somebody has a machine translation also, which is capable of dealing with security compliance.
Would be integrated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. Oh, we have another question.
I have one. It's a short one. Can we have more than one language in the source?
That's a good question. No, right now, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Harsha. Well, hopefully there's a little bit of you saw here first, folks, with some of the innovations, and you got something out of them. We're now going to move into the interesting part. First, we'll take your questions, and then we'll get voting. So, Alex, you help us out with questions?
You bet.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so we'll take one question per innovator, and maybe a few didn't get any because it's democratic. But I'm going to bring up, let's bring up Benedetta first. So the question submitted is, does your process handle the fake resumes, and how does it actually prevent possible cheating?
So the system actually works better than a human in terms of identifying spam because it's trained to identifying patterns. So it's completely automated, of course, and it's just like a spam filter, basically, in that specific, in the case of fake resumes and spam resumes. So I don't know if I answered the question. Yeah?
Did it answer the question? You can say it anonymous if you want.
No?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Istvan, we have one for you. The question is, does it also assign the resources as part of the initial setup?
No, the resource assignment is done by the business management system. So whatever you're using, you can use XDR, you can use BlueNet, you can use LBS, you can use whatever you like, your own system as well through APIs. That's the one that is taking the resource assignment. And what we want to do is that whenever you assign the resource here, it should also be assigned in the translation tool, which is something that if it's not hosted by you, then it's a challenge. So basically, it gives you the possibility to assign a resource, but it's not a TMS.
Thank you. Okay. The next one is for David. And the question would be, can the quality criteria be customized, and can a rating be applied per project or only per segment?
It's a good question. We can do it by document inside projects, so you can apply different QA models or metrics inside a project if you need it, but mostly you want to compare them, so you use only one model.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we have one for Amy. And, oh, you know what? So it's not technically a question, it's an answer to your question, which was, it was technically 16 languages professionally by the Hungarian translator. So, and yes, you bet. And I think
Well, while you're on stage, does anyone have a question for Amy? Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for bearing with us. We're figuring this out on the fly. The next one would be for Harsha and Image Translate.
Yeah, great question so far, by the way. Thank you. And you know, once we're done with this round, if you want to ask one from the floor, we'll do that too.
So the question is, how can you reuse content and make sure that client terminology is respected?
Right now, the way it works is, so because it's a web-based tool and then you have an account, you can create everything that you translate using the tool, in fact, becomes your translation memory, which you can reuse. So that way we take care of consistency so that you don't have to repeat yourself.
Thank you. Okay, and we have one for Julia. So the question is, did you change the process of UI design to achieve this? And were the design specs created with functional descriptions already, or did you implement that?
Yes, the designs are created with the functional tags in. It took some convincing, the designers, but once they saw the results, nobody complained.
Cool. Thanks, Julia. You're free to go. So, anyone got any questions from the audience? We'll take one or two if anyone didn't get a chance to put it through Slido, or is the opposite of shy and wants to raise their hand.
We had other questions, but I just did one per person, sorry.
Okay, so we've done a democratic approach. So what I'd suggest is maybe at the end, if you had a question that wasn't answered, maybe you'd approach the stage and speak to the innovator and raise your question with them. Okay? So now you have a role to play, and it's vote for your favorite innovator in the process track, your favorite innovator in the technology track. So, are you ready to vote? This is how you do it. Go into Slido, hashtag LocWorld40. If anyone, for whatever reason, can't connect or whatever, come find me in the stage and we will take your vote old school style.
So we'll leave that for 1 minute.
Yeah, so 1 minute, get voting.
It says voting closed.
We need a dancer on stage. Just. You can't vote. Another 20 seconds. Okay, keep going if you're going. I'll give you time. So, have we got both open, Alex? Technology. So you should see 2 votes.
No, just only one.
Only one. Oh, we're doing one at a time. Sorry. We'll take that as our gremlin today. Okay, so we're closing that one. And just so as you know, we're doing audience votes, and then the dragons also have votes, and we're merging them together, and we have a process which we're adjudicating down here. And the second one is open. Get voting again, please. Is that there we go. Thank you. I have their votes.
We have 1 minute. 1 minute. Okay. Okay. A couple more seconds. Right. And we'll lock We're not voting again. I'm just showing results. Sounds good.
We know what's about to go on here, so anyone see the Oscars where the envelopes were on this? I just have to remember the names. No, we're all good. So look, the way we look at the Process Innovation Challenge is it's an opportunity for knowledge sharing, for people to get on stage who normally would have the opportunity. They have 4 minutes. Try doing 4 minutes on stage. It's really good practice. It's very difficult. I'm glad I'm not doing it. And now what we want to do is announce the results, and then we're going to have a final round. So, starting with process. Well done, everyone, by the way. The process track winner is Julia. So I'll just get you to stand here embarrassingly. Yeah, you can hang out here. So technology, who won the technology track? Well, the technology track was won by Harshal. So, now comes the fun part. Now we're going to give you a couple of minutes to gather your thoughts, and then we'll do some Q&A. And in the meantime, I'll talk to the audience. So, do you want to find a quiet corner for 3 minutes? Oh, you're ready to go. Fantastic. Well, let's move it on. I'll just say a couple of things, and really quickly, right? This year we wanted to keep things simple. We got away with the gremlins, which we did a good bit of work on, thanks to Alex in particular, and the LocWorld team. So this came from Australian rugby back in the 90s, and we tried to apply it here. Anyone know what these are? Anyone? Navy SEALs. We tried to follow this motto as well, you know, get it smooth. A lot of effort was put in by the innovators, by the Dragons, and we had dry run yesterday and that went well, and by and large they did as well. So there are some of the things we tried to bring into this. Oh, performance cadence. If you want to go away with some kind of crazy phrase for, you know, one of those bingo games with all those words, that's one that a Navy SEAL once told me. He said, we go slow until we have it smooth, and then we move it up to the performance cadence needed. Because I asked him, I said, I thought Navy SEALs went really fast. He said, yeah, we get to performance cadence. Anyway, that's your word of the day. We're going to find out who sits on the question mark. These are the previous winners of the pick. Do we have any in the audience? Hola! Hola, hola! Anyone else? No, just Ola. Ola's there. And we have prize winner for track winners. Everyone gets a certificate of being here and all that stuff. And Multilingual have donated us a very nice prize where you can actually have something publicised in Multilingual magazine. So thank you to Multilingual. Katie's over there. Thank you. And LocWorld have a prize, and we have some innovation stuff that we'll give. That's tomorrow. Right. Now, we're also doing a panel tomorrow, 11:30, on innovation. So it's a sister thing to this pick. And some of the panelists are already here. We will have Miguel and Yuka, and we'll be joined by a few other folks tomorrow morning. So if you want to continue the conversation on innovation, that's a good place to be. We also have a booth beside the Networking Lounge, and that's where you can come, have a conversation on innovation. Some of the pick innovators will be hanging around there from time to time, and also the dragons. So if you want a conversation on innovation, that's the place for it. Also, if you want to find out how you can join the pick, that's where you need to go and drop your card and maybe win a nice innovation book. All right. So you're ready to go? All right, well, let's bring it on. So, Julia, would you stand forth? And dragons, do you have some deep dive questions for Julia? While you're thinking about that, Julia, just remind us a little bit about what your innovation is all about.
Yes, so we decided to, well, I'm passionate about neurolinguistics, and I knew that some of these MRI scans looking at the brains of people that whilst they're translating were coming out. And I've always had this idea in my mind that source text can be a problem and limiting per se. So we decided to take it out of the translation process. And we think we found a way to do it at scale.
So no source text, forget about it, change your chip, as they say in Spanish. Go with a different model.
Yeah.
That's how you're going to change the industry.
Hopefully.
One step at a time. Excellent. Good answer. Dragons.
Julia, you're still working within a translation management system, right? And the translation memories and so on. It's just that English is not the source text, you have a master.
Yes, exactly. So even our copyright for English writes the English copy within the translation management software.
So yeah, I'm interested in two things actually. But the first one is how difficult was it to get the writers of the master? How difficult was it to get them to write text and write the explanation for what the bottom needs to do or whatever, rather than the actual English text? And what was the acceptance amongst the linguists as well? Did you get any pushback asking, I want to see the English text?
Oh, yeah. I had one translator candidate that threatened to sue me when she came in for a test, because then she saw there was no source text and she started shouting that that was not a translation text. But yes, it was difficult to get people to write the source, which is in fact the brief, what we call the master. So initially it was me. I've been thinking about this approach for a couple of years, and then we prepared style guides. So now both the content team and the designers can have a go at this, and because they're style guides and they actually have a translation memory system in place, they could even leverage existing master text without losing the concept of translation memory altogether, because we moved to this. So they write the master in a consistent way.
Thank you.
Cool. Can I have this mic turned on? Any questions from the floor? I'll come up to you. Yeah, we have one over here. No, here, your name, question. Thank you.
Hi Julia, I'm Kirill from Content Quo. Question, did you, obviously you're helping the company make much more money through this innovation. Did you get a raise or a bonus?
Good question.
Did you record that? Can I get back to you? I'm really fortunate. I have a very supportive environment at work. My colleagues are my friends. Some of these people I've worked with before. And I'm really passionate about what I do. I think that pays off.
Brilliant. We have another question over here. Keep me fit today, lads.
I'm Julia, localization manager at Tenable. My work is super boring after Kirill's. What were your criteria for selecting linguists for this task?
So, of course, not everybody that would do a traditional translation task would be able to do this. But you know, what's interesting is that for a couple of years, I thought the people were the issue. So rather than hiring translators, I would have to hire copywriters. I actually deliberately decided not to hire anybody that had a translation background. But actually what I've discovered is that it's not the people, it's the process. So if you remove the source text and you substitute it with the brief, you unlock this mechanism. So the good translators, of course they're creative people, they can perform this task. What you do is you remove the blocker and you allow them to tap into the creative part of their brain.
Brilliant. So let's move things on to and give us a quick summary, and we'll take some questions then.
As far as the summary goes, of course, the reason why we built this is like, as tech people, I've particularly worked on each of these technologies separately, which is OCR, machine translation, etc., etc. And then at the previous company that I used to work for, what we saw was the designers and the DTP specialists were spending way too much time over extremely trivial tasks. And then we knew that all you had to do was to just connect these technologies. And then it basically started off as a weekend project, and then we decided to ship it, and then we now see that there are a lot of people using it. They use it for a lot of things, like something as non-serious as people read comics using it, to people actually taking prescriptions, photos of the doctor's prescriptions and trying to translate to understand what's being said. Yeah.
Excellent. So I'll go to the audience first, because we're tight on time, so we want to stick to time. Go over there. We'll take 2 questions. Thanks, Jim.
My question was around quality. How do you control the quality after MT is run on the screenshots? And do you use normal, so to speak, translators, or do you look for specific people?
So we operate in 2 ways. So there's a free version that we give out to everyone, so that basically is to solve the problem of understanding what's in the image. And the second one is where we try to approach translators. So the way we kind of label it is, this is like a design tool for translators, where you don't have to spend the work of learning Photoshop or other design tools. So you run, as a translator, you sign up and then you buy a subscription model. Then after after the MT is done, you post-edit and then export. That's it.
Okay, we'll take one more question, but we've opened voting, so if you can go up to Slido and you can start putting your preference in. Oh, there's a mic there.
Okay, so for your solution, do you own the technologies for the OCR and the MT? The MT, I think you're using Google Translate, yeah. But for the OCR, do you own that technology as well, or you use third party?
We use both. So for the tricky one, so what we do is we do multiple passes. Once we use an external provider, and depending on what output comes back, if that's not good enough, then we do a multiple pass. As an engineer who's particularly worked on these technologies, I don't see a point trying to rebuild them from scratch. So we use whatever the best tools out there. I think the way we see it is like, say, the whole is then greater than the sum of its parts. So putting them all together is more value than rebuilding OCR or rebuilding machine translation. That's how I see it.
Oh. I think I moved my mic.
Other source languages? Right now I think we
Yeah.
support...
Just repeat the question.
She's asking when are we going to support more source languages?
Yeah, more source languages.
So because that's definitely tied to the OCR. So if you switch a vendor, for example, if you swap out Google and then you put in Ambi, we'll be able to support more. We are transparent. So our value is in the pipeline where you can swap out components. So you put in a different OCR and a different machine translation engine, you should be able to do any pair that you want.
Okay, so get your votes in. We're giving you 20 seconds. One more vote out. One more vote out. Okay. Dragons, I need your votes. Yeah. Good old school, this. Wherever it is. So, is this mic on? No, two. No? 1, 2. Thank you. So, Ulrich Haynes was one of myself and Ulrich came up with this idea. So, he's going to find out first who won, and then you will. So, just give me 10 seconds to make that happen. So the text should be on its way. Oh, excellent. So, Process Innovator of the Year for 2019. Hold on. Thank you. Hello. I'll use this mic here. No, good. Well done, everyone. Thank you all for staying with us. And see you at the booth. Process Innovator of the Year is Julia. Thank you all very much. We're just about on time, so appreciate your support and maybe see you tomorrow. Thank you.